So, we've taken a look at the first half of the title, and looked at a list of features that could improve Minecraft's mining system and cave generation massively. So now let's have a look at the second half, crafting. In 1.14, Minecraft's crafting system was already updated a lot, with the brand new workstations such as the cartography table, the grindstone, the stonecutter and the blast furnace. However, there are a few items within the game that currently don't have crafting recipes, which I think would spice the survival aspect of the game a lot if they did. So here are a list of crafting recipes that I think should be added into the game. Let me know if there's anything you think I missed, and if you'd like to have input into any of these future videos, join my Discord server, which is linked in the description below. Our first block is the bell, and this, let's be honest, really does need a crafting recipe. In fact, out of any of the ones in this video, it would probably be the one I'd love to see the most, because the bell is actually an incredibly useful block slash item, because it's awesome for building. I mean, look at it in this town centre here. It doesn't add too much, but it is a nice detail and does add a fair amount of lore to any kind of build. But it's also great for redstone contraptions too, if you want an alarm system or something along those lines, or even just a villager trading hall. I'm not sure how useful they are, but I'm sure they could be used in some way. But anyway, here is the crafting recipe on the floor here, with 3 stone on either side, a stick in the centre and a gold block. And I'll show you what this is for in a minute. But here we're going to put it in the crafting table, like so. And there we have it, a bell. And once again, this would just be incredibly useful for decoration in any kind of world. You can just place it down like so, because currently the only way you can obtain this in survival mode is just by finding a village and looting it from the town centre. Also, while we're on the topic of golden items, let's re-add the recipe for the enchanted golden apple. And maybe you could have an even rarer version that can't be crafted, because it is also really awesome finding these in desert temples and things like that. However, I think we should still re-add it as a very expensive, I guess, food source, with the golden apple instead of the apple in the centre, and then gold all around the centre. This means we would need 9 gold ingots plus an extra 8 for every single gold block, and then the golden apple in the center. So it's quite expensive and totally worth the amount of food it gives you. Next up we have the mushroom block, and this is such a useful block, especially the interior of the block itself, or just the outside of the brown mushroom block, because they are so useful for walls and houses, or even what they're meant to be used for, mushrooms, of course, or giant mushrooms, should I say. So basically, we should be able to craft them without having to have silk touch, and also uncraft them. So I'll get onto the uncrafting later, but all you need to do is use 4 mushrooms like so, and you can always put them back and make them like this, an infinite loop of brown mushrooms like so. And the same thing goes with the red mushrooms, like so. Super easy, and I don't see why it's not in the game already. Next up we have quite a few items here. So to begin with, we have the saddle, horse armor, chainmail armor and name tags. Now I'll go on into each one separately, but let's start with the saddle. Now I think the saddle really needs a recipe, because currently they're only obtainable from loot chests and from ravagers, and to be honest, we really need a recipe for them because they are incredibly useful, and it would be very cheap, just a single iron nugget with 3 leather for a saddle. Now we'll move on to the horse armor. So there's obviously diamond, gold, iron and leather as well. So basically what you need is your saddle in the center, a tripwire hook at the bottom, and then your item of choice there. So there's the leather, there's the iron, here's the gold, and then here is the diamond, like so. And as you can see, it's a really useful recipe, especially if you want to make an abundance of leather horse armor to dye and make your horses look really cool, because, I mean, the leather horse armor was a great addition to the game, but it's also just a super easy way to armor up your horses without having to go exploring too much, because I know a lot of players aren't a huge fan of the exploration in the game. Now let's take a look at, I guess, the chainmail armor. Yes, so chainmail, it's worse than diamond, and in fact it's worse than iron as well, but you can only get it from trading, so why not have a very cheap crafting recipe? This would be super useful if people just want quick backup armor if they don't quite have enough iron. It's still a really useful recipe, but I don't see why there isn't a recipe already. There used to be a recipe, but it was a bit of an odd one. It was actually made out of fire. Anyway, the last one is going to be the name tag. So this will utilize 2 paper, 1 string, and there we go. Simple, simple, simple. Because currently, you can only obtain them from chests. So I don't see why, when you need to name something, you can't just craft a name tag. You would still probably want a string farm and possibly a paper farm, but I don't see why we shouldn't have a recipe for them anyway. For my next design, it's actually mostly for the purposes of just making it easy to craft these items in bulk, but it is to make minecarts using this. So normally you make a minecart with a chest like so. However, it would be so much more helpful if we could just do this, because iron is stackable, so are chests, so you could just shift click it in and then shift click it out, and it would be so much easier just to do that. It would be much easier to use a recipe book, and it would just make life a lot more simpler if you want to make a minecart with a chest. The same goes with hoppers, furnaces, command blocks. Currently there isn't even a recipe with this either, so I would add this one. And also, of course, TNT, everyone's favourite kind of minecart. In fact, I'd purely add it just because of this. Look at this. Right, I'm going to zoom in on this section here. Look at that. I know it's very simple. I'm acting like a child, but because I am, but look. Who wouldn't want that in the game? Just being able to do that. So worth it. Anyway, I would also add a way of crafting cobwebs. I don't see why this isn't in the game already either, because cobwebs are super useful for crafting dungeons or cave systems or any kind of abandoned, ruined kind of theme. So why not be able to craft them with 5 string? And this would be shapeless, so you can craft them like so as well. We can craft them like that, however you want. And there, 5 cobwebs just to decorate your area like so. So yeah, I think this is super useful, especially for crafting these kinds of minecarts in bulk. If you're making some kind of slime farm and you want the hopper minecarts to run underneath your farm, it would be super useful just to craft loads of them in bulk using this system. Moving on, I would add the ability to decraft items. So by that I mean craft one item, insert its respective item that would make it up. So here I've got a list of them, so I'll take them out like so. I've already shown you the brown and red mushroom blocks. They can be crafted back into what they can be made into. But to begin with, let's have a recipe for gravel using 4 flint. Compressed ice is made with 9 ice, so why not have a compressed ice give you 9 ice? Blue ice, 9 compressed ice like so. And magma blocks, magma cream, build it like that. Snow blocks, snowballs, build it like that. Wool, string, build it like that. And this recipe here was actually already in the game, so I don't see why we can't make wool back into string anyway. Cobwebs you can also make back into string. Netherwort blocks back into netherwort. Glowstone back into glowstone dust. And the last one would be super useful for making coral actually renewable, because you can't grow the tube coral block with bone meal, but you can grow the plant, or it's not really a plant, but I guess that's the closest thing it is to, I guess. But tube coral in a 4x4 would give you 2 tube coral blocks, meaning it's useful to farm still. And look, and you can't craft these back into anything, just because I didn't think it would fit into the game. It would be a bit hard to decide between these and the fans, especially since you can farm them anyway. So yeah, I think it would be super handy just to make coral renewable. The same thing would work with dead coral. If I get some dead bubble coral, we can make dead bubble coral blocks. There we go, horn coral blocks. It's super easy just to make these like so, and you can easily farm the blocks or the tube coral itself to make it into the blocks. And the next crafting recipe was suggested by My Name's King in my Discord server, which I highly recommend you join if you want to have input into any of the series on my channel. But I don't want to ramble on about that. Basically, we should be able to craft stairs and slabs back into their respective blocks. But before that, blaze powder plus oak slab equals petrified oak slab. Why? Because it's an incredibly useful block and we don't currently have access to it in survival mode. Basically, it's an oak slab that doesn't burn when in contact with fire, and it requires a pickaxe to be broken. That's the only reason really, but it can also be crafted back into an oak planks. And basically it was removed in beta or alpha or something and then re-added in 1.13, but there's currently no crafting recipe for it. And the same goes for any other slab. One slab plus another slab equals the full block. The only one this doesn't apply to is the stone bricks, because currently that makes chiseled stone bricks. So instead you just need 4, and there you have it, 2 stone bricks. And the same thing goes with stairs, but unfortunately I had to make it so you get less blocks than you put in, just so when you use the stone cutter on the crafting table you can't accidentally duplicate blocks. And finally, prismarine, same thing. This works exactly the same for every single stair block. And that is it. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please, as usual, leave any more suggestions down below or in my Discord server. Once again, please leave any comments down below if there's anything you think I missed or anything you would add personally, or if you just agree with everything I added, or maybe you disagree with something on this list. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.